All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Southborough Capital Planning Committee meeting for Wednesday, July 7th, 2021. It is 7:16 p.m. I'll call us to order and note that all members are present. Pursuant to Senate Bill number 2475, which was signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021, this meeting of the Capital Planning Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at https://www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event they were unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. All right. Hope everyone is doing well. What I thought we would do leading up to 7:30, we do not have meeting minutes for the June 21 meeting yet to review, so there's no action required on that agenda item. I just wanted to confirm that everyone is in receipt of the questions and everyone understands the questions that they will be asking as we go through it. We will not, you'll notice we're not streaming live on YouTube. We've asked each applicant to not join the Zoom until their scheduled time out of fairness to the others. But obviously we couldn't restrict any access because it is an open public meeting. So we've just asked each of them to join at their scheduled time. They've been informed of their time and will be joining. And we've also asked them to not only list their name, but the firm they're associated with so that we'll all be able to easily identify them. And mainly it was to help me toggle people in and out as we go. I guess, are there any questions on process proceeding for tonight? Okay, that was easy. The only other thing I will say is I'm not inclined to allow follow-up questions unless you just want someone to expand on something they said. So you shouldn't take a question and turn it into something more than the question that we had envisioned, just because, especially if that happens with the second, third, or fourth applicant, we don't really have a chance to bring the first applicant back in, to the process and further discussion. That makes sense?
So more, if you ask a second question, it's to clarify that they didn't really answer your first one.
Yeah. But it should be right. And I'll obviously try to, if you have something, just ask it and I'll try to make a call if it's in line with the original question or not. Anything else? Then I'm going to propose that we go into recess until about 7:28 p.m. I'll just ask that everyone mute themselves and turn their cameras off until we come back. Does that make sense? Everyone good?
Yep.
All right. All right, I'm going to note that everyone is back, and it is we are coming back at a recess at 7:29 p.m. I'm going to ask, because I can see members in the audience, but I cannot tell if they are our first group. If anyone is associated with Weston and Sampson Engineers, Inc., to just raise your hand and I will pull you into the live panelist room. Good evening, Dan and Scott. Just ask you to unmute yourselves. Are you gentlemen expecting anyone else with you tonight?
Yes, we are. We've got several others joining us, and they should be raising their hands momentarily. You might want to, if you're still visible on that earlier screen, ask them to raise their hands.
Yeah, I see one. I have Brian coming in now. Any ideas how many others I should expect?
We should be having Brian McCusker, you've just let in, John Como, and Scott Henricks, and possibly James Pearson. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to join us tonight.
Okay. I've just let John in. And if you are all okay, I will get going and be on the lookout for them and bring them in if that works for you.
Sure.
Okay.
We want to respect your schedule, so.
Yeah, I just want to be fair to the firms that will be following you this evening as well. Okay. So, great. Good evening and welcome. And first and foremost, thank you for your submission of the RFQ in response to our space needs design that the town of Southborough is looking to undertake. I'm the chair of the capital planning committee, and you'll see, I don't know how your screen is laid out, but Ms. Braccio, Mr. Hark, Mr. Palmer, and Mr. Pfaff are other members of the capital planning committee. Mm-hmm. You may also see our finance director and town administrator at certain points during the meeting tonight as well. But it'll be the five of us will be the ones asking you the questions. We'll be going on a rotating basis. To be fair to all the firms, we've obviously asked none of them to join. This is an open public meeting. It is being recorded. Right. We've asked them not to join during your interviews and obviously have asked the same of all the firms. You'll have about 30 minutes. I will give you a heads up about 5 minutes towards the end. We have a series of questions we'll ask you, like I said, on a rotating basis. There's 7 in total, with the 7th being more of a wrap-up conclusionary type item. And you can pace yourself at whatever pace you'd like, and obviously have as many or as little members of your group weigh in, depending on the nature of the question and the expertise of the team you've brought before us tonight. In terms of the process and where we're at, we do not expect to make a decision tonight. However, we are holding a public meeting tomorrow to deliberate and hopefully make a decision. Our decision is a recommendation, not a conclusion. Our appointing authority, which is the Board of Selectmen for the town of Southborough, will ultimately be the ones that would award a contract pending successful contract negotiations. They are scheduled to meet next Tuesday. So assuming we can come to a recommendation tomorrow night, we will make a recommendation to them. Assuming they agree with our recommendation, they would make a motion next week. And then we would enter into a negotiation with whichever firm is the successful one.
Excellent, thank you. We appreciate the explanation of your process, and it's nice to see that you've thought this through pretty carefully. So, thank you.
All right. With that, I'm going to ask the first question, then we'll go around from there. Just ask you, obviously you're Weston and Sampson Engineers, but ask you to introduce your team, what role each of the team members we see here would play, with a key emphasis on who our day-to-day contact would be if you were the successful respondent.
Absolutely. So if you allow me, I'll make a quick introduction, just of myself at first. I'm Dan Tenney. I'm one of the lead architects at Weston Sampson. I'm the principal in charge for this project. So I'm kind of in an oversight role where I'll make sure that my team is is well coordinated, organized, and has the resources it needs to do your job. With me tonight is John Como. At least on my screen, he's down at the bottom. Another guy with a fantastic hairdo. And John is the lead architect, and he will be your primary point of contact on the project. But as you probably see in our organizational chart that we included in our qualifications package, there are 3 of us in that top box. And the third person is Brian McCusker, who is the project manager. He'll be really doing the work more behind the scenes, although you will see him as part of the interaction that we have with the town, should we be selected. All 3 of us will be equally aware of the progress of the work and the needs of the team, so that there's not just a single point of dependence for communication with the town and for us to keep our work moving forward. With us also is Scott Henricks, who is our lead mechanical engineer, and he'll be heading up the MEP side of the assessment of the existing facilities. So with that, I will hand over primary response to John, and he'll be the ringmaster in allocating questions appropriately as we go forward this evening.
Great, thanks, Dan.
Sure.
We'll go to Ms. Brascio.
Thanks. Good evening, gentlemen. We are interviewing 3 other companies for this role. What is unique about your company that sets it above the others? And what is the single primary reason we should select you over someone else? Thank you.
Well, John, I think you're
on
muted.
mute. Nope, you're on mute again. Muted again.
Just asked you to unmute, John. There you go. Can't hear you.
Oh, must be happening.
Okay. We've seen this. We've seen this with Zooms before. I don't know quite the background of it. Give John another chance at the buttons. Nope, John, we still can't hear you.
All right, log in and log back out, maybe.
Okay. Is there a call-in telephone number that we could use to get John on audio?
Yes.
Okay.
It's gonna take me a minute to find it, but if I don't know, John, I see John's off mute.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
We can keep going. I can answer that while we try to figure this out. So one thing that sets us apart, and the 3 of us are architects, and then we have Scott as an engineer, is we're an engineering firm, but with an architectural discipline. And we have pretty much everything in-house that you can think of, from civil, geotech, all the way to hazmat, to, fire protection, to mechanical, to architectural. So it's kind of handy and structural. And it does come in handy for, projects that are in construction, but it does come in handy for feasibility studies, because then if I have a question on a code or some sort of, question that I might not be familiar with, it's very handy to reach to an expert in their field and get their information,
Right.
rather than Excel.
I think Brian's put that well. We are an exceptionally multidisciplinary company. Our facilities group, which John and Brian and I are part of, is centered around an architectural practice that specializes in municipal facilities, primarily public works, transit, and municipal various municipal support facilities. But we do a wide range of work, and we work with a wide range of professionals within the company. So we're really a one-stop shop in that regard. We collaborate very well across our disciplines. Really, the only discipline that we tend to outsource is cost estimating, and that's really a deliberate choice to make sure that remains a third-party objective service, and especially in these times where the construction market is completely crazy. So there, John, are you on? Nope, John, we still
John, if you go to the mute button, hit the little caret there, it'll go up and you can say switch to phone audio, and that'll give you the dialing. So the little caret next to the arrow next to the mute button will give you the switch to phone audio options.
There was also 2 iterations of John in the room, so I had to remove one.
Is this working?
There you go.
Welcome.
John, I guess
okay, John.
Hire us because of our technical prowess.
Okay, John, you owe me and Brian one.
I was going to reiterate what I heard Brian talking about and Dan talking about, that we do bring to bear multidisciplinary expertise to every project, which really allows us to kind of turn things around quickly for the client. I sit next to the structural engineers, I sit next to the mechanical engineers, and I can just walk over to their desk or bring them up now on Teams and get answers right away. There's no kind of lag time between an inquiry and a response. Right. I think that helps deliver a project quickly, and this project has a tight timeline.
Mm-hmm. Just one other thing I'd add in particular is that as part of our range of work, and I think you probably saw that in our qualifications package, we do a great deal of programming, space needs programming for multiple different municipal departments. And that sometimes is part of a consolidation project where multiple town departments are being brought to a single new location or being reshuffled among existing ones. And that ranges from, for instance, a municipal facilities project currently underway for the city of, the town of Salem, New Hampshire, where they are consolidating, I think, 5 town departments into a single facility, and trying to then look at reuse possibilities for the remaining the vacant properties. We've done restacking plans for Brockton City Hall recently. A lot of times we are looking at different departments and figuring out how to put them together, how to optimize their space use, in addition to the actual design of those spaces once we've established what their space need requirements are.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hark.
Thank you, guys. Maybe just adding on to that last point, similar question, describing a project that your team has recently undertaken or have undertaken with another municipality similar to the town of Southborough, what we're looking to accomplish and what successes and obstacles to completion were those on those specific projects. Thank you.
Recently we're currently working with the town of Acton. Acton has a highway department, public works facility on Forest Road that was built in the 60s. They have various other departments that are under the control of the highway department or the public works department that are spread about town. So we recently completed a space needs analysis of the public works department, including their engineering department, their vehicle maintenance group, their grounds and trees group. And we've analyzed their existing facility for potential adaptive reuse, and came to the conclusion that they were better served with a new facility based on the poor condition of their current situation or the current building and the changing needs of their department since the time the original facility was built. So, that process has taken about 3-4 months. We've performed interviews. We've interviewed all the different departments individually and the heads of those departments as a group. We've developed multiple schemes for either adaptively reusing their existing facility or programming a new facility, and have come to the conclusion that, again, that the new facility would be the best option for the town with their also consensus. Presented to their Board of Selectmen prior to town meeting, and we're currently getting approval for the next phase, which is full design services. Now we're acting as, in this case, as the OPM. So we're not ultimately going to be the designer for the facility, but our project or our task for the town was to provide the space needs and then the conceptual layouts that came from that.
I'd add one other project I think I mentioned briefly a moment ago, which is a city hall plan for the city of Brockton, which we completed last year. And they had a classic municipal problem, which was a historically significant building, spatially very beautiful and interesting, but very challenging to adapt to modern uses, and a whole group of, I think, 12 municipal departments, all of which had been in their space for generations. And so, the assessor had never left the space they were, put in 1898 or whenever the building was built. And they some of these departments then would outgrow their space. Some of them would shrink and be in a space that was far too large. So there was a major restacking effort that took 3 or 4 different iterations before we made our final recommendations that the city was comfortable with. So it's a similar issue that you've got, to some extent in the townhouse and the senior center, a little bit everywhere, of how do you fit those pieces together properly. Now that I think resulted in a nice set of recommendations, and then the mayor changed. So things went on. we had a new administration and COVID kind of simultaneously, and which also brings up an interesting aspect to what we would imagine discussing with you, is that how do we adjust our recommendations to the post-COVID world? And there are no clear answers on that, but there's some strategies and questions to ask that will get you into a comfortable place.
Great, thank you. Mr. Palmer.
I think Mr. Tenney may have jumped into my question there unintentionally, but may have answered it unintentionally too. My question was, what was the most difficult space needs challenge that your firm has faced in the evaluating, planning, or completion stages in the last 5 years?
Most difficult.
And difficult can be either in the project itself, the process.
Yeah, John, if you don't mind, I think I have an answer for that may be the most illuminating. And this was a consolidated facility that that the construction was actually completed about 1.5 years, 2 years ago for the town of Orleans down on the Cape. And it was a consolidation of at least seven different town departments into one new facility. And the challenge there was, it wasn't that difficult to work with each of those departments and figure out what kind of space they needed, from office space to staff space to meeting space to public contact. They had some very interesting issues with having to have a place where they could sell all the beach access stickers and the landfill stickers and the boat moorings and all. But the biggest challenge was that most of those departments had never worked in the same space together, even though they were largely under the same administrative structure. We had to be very careful in talking with them and working with the director of that facility to understand how they felt about being, put all new space together, and understanding what they would be able to share, what they would not be able to share for, sometimes for just operational reasons. That was the biggest challenge, I think, that at least that I've seen in recent years. It worked out in the end very well. Part of the reason was because everybody got much better space than they had before. So you had the advantage of moving everyone into a modern facility, whereas they've been working out of, kind of almost dilapidated garages and, leftover buildings scattered all around town. But it was, even though some of them were really wanting for space and safe facilities, they were reluctant to leave what they were comfortable with. So that can be a challenge that we can help with in articulating the advantages of reorganizing their space, in addition to kind of accepting and addressing the reluctance they may have to change.
Thanks.
Mr. Pfaff.
In looking at Southborough's RFQ and other publicly available information, what do you see as the greatest opportunity and challenge as we embark down this process?
I think the fact that you're just embarking on this process, we don't know exactly where it's going to lead, but I think if everyone keeps an open mind and we follow the process through, we're going to come up with some things that you didn't think about, and I'm sure that everybody has some preconceived notions about how they think this might go. There's so many different factors involved with either reconfiguring a space or, excuse me. Excuse me, I mean, sorry about that. So, when we start a process, we keep an open mind, and we're coming in there without any preconceived notions either. And we want to learn from you what your operations are, what works best for you, what doesn't work, and then maybe we can throw out some ideas that we have from past experience that you haven't thought of. Before I worked at Weston and Sampson, I've been here for about 11 years. I worked at Brown University in their facilities management department. The head planner there always said that the best solution isn't always a built solution. So I think we want to look at first opportunities that maybe don't require building something, and then maybe that is the right solution, but we want to look at other alternatives that are most cost effective for the town, but also solve a problem once we understand what that problem is. And it comes from communication with you, from the department heads, and from the employees, and that's the most important part is getting that communication going and understanding and defining what the problem is, and then coming up with a solution that works for everybody.
All right, Ms. Braccio.
Thank you. If you were sitting on this side of the table and interviewing potential designers, what is the most important question you would ask of those companies?
I'd want to know if, I'd want to know if we have the time to get the work done, that our personalities and our approach would mesh with your group, that we're not coming in with any kind of preconceived ideas, that we're keeping an open mind. I'd want to hire someone that has the experience. We work for an engineering firm, but we're three architects that have over 40 years of experience in programming, and space needs analysis is really the beginning step for almost every project that we undertake, and we all have experiences in different realms of and aspects of space needs analysis and conceptual design. So those are some of the things that I think would be important to hiring a firm.
So that's a nice lead into kind of what I'll call a closing set of questions. Some of these may be as simple as yes, no answers. In the last one, likely it's more than a yes, no, but it's just a series of confirmatory type questions. You have 5 minutes left, but I think you'll be able to get through this. So are you available to start negotiations next week if you were selected? Seeing heads nodding yes.
He's nodding. I'll say yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Are you available to start working immediately upon successful award of a contract?
Yes.
Are you comfortable with the proposed timeline outlined in the RFQ?
Yes, and actually, I think we appreciate a tighter timeline. It forces us to be as efficient as possible and to hit the ground running. So, 45 days is pretty quick turnaround time, and we'd want to get out there and meet you and get the process going immediately.
Okay. Please describe any competing priorities that your team members may have during that time period.
I think there's three of us here. The only competing priorities, I think, I want to call them priorities, is it's summertime and there are some vacations coming up, but we have the ability to infill for each other. So that's probably the only. That's a seasonal vacation type thing, but I don't think anyone is immune from that at this time of year.
Right, and we did discuss that as a group earlier today, and the timing is good. We've got about 3 major projects that are just wrapping up construction, so we have some comfortable capacity now that we're not going to be just shifting people in and out. Only as available we can commit to this project. And again, as John said, a short timeline is good. It focuses people, and it tends to keep the conversations fresh from start to finish. You don't have long gaps and have to go back over material that's already been discussed.
Okay. And really the final part of that question is, do you have any questions for us?
We didn't really think in those terms, John, unless you had something. My question would be almost.
You touched on it earlier, Dan, a little bit. And my question would be, how has, and this is going back to COVID, how has COVID kind of impacted the town's, situation? Do you envision everyone in an office, or is that the case now? Is everyone back, or do you foresee a future where some people are staying at home and you don't have a full complement of employees in all of your office space as it currently is?
I would say, unless you can see Mark Purple, who's our town administrator. I don't want to speak for him. Mark, if you're not ready to do that, I think that would be a great interview question for each of the department heads for the successful design firm. Are you okay with that, Mark?
Yeah, I think that'd be fine. I agree.
Okay, good. And I'll throw an additional variable into that, which is, you've got 7 very different buildings, different vintages, different condition, different code compliance issues, different mechanical systems. I want to give Scott Henricks, if there's a moment, a chance to say something, because as we evaluate where individual departments might best go, we need to look a little more broadly and say, if this is, for instance, a department that has a lot of public contact and a lot of people in close proximity to each other, you don't want to put them in an older building with a substandard mechanical plant. You want to put them in a newer building or a retrofitted building with Scott, I'll let you describe what indoor air quality needs to be in these cases.
As far as a question for myself, in addition to the obvious COVID question these days with regard to air quality, which we certainly have been dealing with several of the clients. I want to understand 2 things. One is, most towns and municipalities these days have energy objectives that they want to meet. And I realize for space planning, that may not be a huge concept, but if there is substantial energy needs that the town is, or net zero or anything like that the town's looking for, that is going to have to factor into the space issue. With regard to, you mentioned previously about difficult and challenging projects. We're currently working with the town of Winchester on a historic town hall. And I'll be honest with you, I've done several historic buildings over the years, but we're really struggling hard to get proper ventilation into this 100-plus-year-old beautiful town hall. It's been one of my most challenging projects. And then combine that with the air quality needs of COVID and, today's modern issues with regard to that. So, I need to understand those aspects of it to make sure that the space needs are required for that. are taken into account.
And I think whoever the successful firm is here, the first meeting is probably going to be with John Parent, who's our facilities director for the town. He has a very good handle on energy systems, what works, what doesn't work. As you saw, we have a new public safety building. I think we learned some things going through that of, should we have done things differently with the energy efficiency, et cetera. But I think, personally, just speaking for myself, I think that's the right question to be asking. And we'd obviously be looking for expertise, because I don't think any of the five of us, at least currently sitting here, have that expertise to be able to guide you. We'd be looking for the advice of a professional.
Well, I'd hope to be able to help guide you folks, right, in an interview and understanding what your thoughts are. Actually, even your capabilities for maintenance, right, and how you manage that, in my mind, has a substantial impact on the types of systems we would be considering to meet your needs. Most people walk into this energy thing thinking they want the best and the most up to date, but not too many towns and municipalities can handle keeping a Formula One race car going on the track. It's the reality, right? Most folks are looking for a Honda Civic or something like that runs well, it's pretty efficient, and it's you can count on it day in and day out, and you don't have to tweak it every day.
Yeah.
And so those are the things I need to understand to help this process along.
That's great. And I wanted to thank all of you for your time tonight. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to meet remotely, and we will be in touch shortly.
Great.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. And we look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night. All right.
All right. Next up on our agenda is 8 o'clock interview with TBA Architects, Inc. I see some participants have joined us. If you could just raise your hand if you're affiliated with TBA, just so I pull you in. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening.
Are you two expecting anyone else, or is it just the two of you tonight?
It is just the two of us.
Great. Well, on behalf of the Southborough Capital Planning Committee, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. Just going to give you a very brief overview of how this is going to run for about the next 30 minutes, and then we'll fire away with some questions and hopefully get to know you a little better. So we are interviewing all the firms that we have advanced to this round tonight. We do not expect to make a decision tonight. However, are holding a public meeting tomorrow to make a recommendation on which firm we would advance to the Board of Selectmen. They ultimately have the authority to award a contract. So they could either take our recommendation or ask us to kind of go back to the drawing board based on what they hear. And that would be only a recommendation to enter into contract negotiations, given that this was an RFQ process and not an RFP type process. So that is our planned timeline. And what we're going to do tonight is, I don't know how you're seeing all of us on the screen, but I serve as the chair of the committee. You see Ms. Braccio, Mr. Hark, Mr. Palmer, and Mr. Pfaff. There are other members of the committee, and Mark Purple is our town administrator. The committee members will ask you a series of rotating questions. You'll have 30 minutes. I'll give you 5-minute heads up as we get near the end. And there's 7 questions in total, so you can take as much or as little time on each question, depending upon obviously how much you think it takes to answer the question. The 7th question, just in full disclosure, is more of a wrap-up, conclusionary type series of simple questions, confirming certain items that were in your RFQ.
Sure.
Any questions for us?
No, we have prepared a few slides, but we're ready for your questions, and if we need to, we can use those to help answer potentially. But
yeah,
please.
so at any time, let me know if you want to present anything, and I'll give you the privileges to do that. But otherwise, I'm just going to roll right into the first question. Just ask you to introduce yourself, roles each of you would play on our respective engagement, and clearly identifying who our day-to-day contact would be.
Sure. So I'm Justin Humphreys. I'm the principal and owner of TBA Architects. TBA has been around for 35 years now as a single firm, and had a history prior to that. I've been with TBA for 20 years, and our practice has been a general practice. We're a medium-sized firm. By general practice, I say we have done, you name the building type, you name the project type, and we've worked on it at some point in the past. We have a few areas of speciality, but the majority of our work is the public realm. So we are very familiar with working with committees, with agencies, department officials, and carrying out projects from the very beginning, such as this, space needs study, feasibility analyses, all the way through construction administration on projects to be done. Island Jeffries is the designer at TBA Architects. And I think the two of us, in addition to, we have another Anika Nilsson-Rips, who I believe is in our proposal. She's on vacation this week, so she's not here. But the three of us be the primary, the primary face of the project. We do have a full host or suite of consultants, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, civil, environmental consultants, geotechnical, geoenvironmental, all of these things. The whole team that's in our package, we have worked with for years and completed multiple projects together, including starting at space needs feasibility studies. Our experience has been in the past that we were, especially in a space needs and a planning sort of mode, initially, we are the ones who primarily do the work. And our approach would be to bring in our consultants on a sort of as needed basis. I think that we would initially introduce the entire project, and then as we get started with you and working together, we determine that some more in-depth analysis is needed on systems and things. We can bring folks in, and they're fully used to that as the way of working. So I think our approach always is that we are here to work with you and to work with who you designate on this project. We have, as I said, done this work multiple times on individual buildings, multiple buildings, municipal buildings, school buildings, all of these things. And every town is different, every building is different, the uses within the building are different, even though you have a townhouse, and many other municipalities have townhouses. It's not the same departments all the time in there, and they're not sort of envisioned the same way. So we really enjoy the process of working closely with you and who you designate to understand the town, to understand the buildings, and to give you ultimately a product in the end that is tailored to your town and your needs.
Great. With that, I'll go to Ms. Braccio for question number 2.
Thank you. Good evening. We are interviewing 3 other companies for this role. What is unique about your company that sets it above the others? And what is the single primary reason we should select you over someone else?
So I believe that one of our great strengths is that we have worked on a great variety of building types and building uses. And in getting the chance to work on all of these different things, it prepares us well for a space needs study that needs to look at multiple buildings that have different uses, different eras, different construction types, and all of these different uses. in order to pull it all together. Whereas firms, I think there are many firms that work on multiple, different building types, but I think that there has been very much a tendency to move in a direction of a use type, and become very familiar with that and expert in it. And I think that as architects, and this is why I say the way we work with our engineers is very much to get them on board and sort of understand the project well, but to bring them in as needed, because we are adept at understanding the big picture, and adept at being able to hone in on specific areas of greater need and pull in the correct people to give the expertise where that needs to be, and then to pull it together into a cohesive whole.
Okay. Mr. Hark with question 3.
Thank you, guys. So please describe a project that you have undertaken with another municipality similar to what the town of Southborough is looking to accomplish, and what the successes and obstacles to completion were. Excuse me.
So there's 2 towns, I think, in particular that we've done this sort of multiple buildings, trying to tackle all of the departments, in town. One of them for the town of Concord, which I think in our proposal, we included a portion of that study. The town of Concord, we looked at 17 buildings total that they had, every department that they had, and buildings, of course, shared or departments shared buildings, and some had their own buildings, and mixture of school department and other town services. Broad range of building types, broad range of site types, everything from little narrow kind of dense in the middle of town sites to larger, broader sites along wetlands, plains, things like this. So this is a case of where there was the challenge was to wrap our heads around all of those different building types, all of those different site conditions, and all of the different departments in there. And this is where working closely with the town and having folks in town fill out detailed surveys to understand the number of people that are in, and what the department does, and what the plans for future growth, and whether there's synergies and things between them. Having that stuff come in, as well as when we're doing site analysis and things like this, pulling all of these things together, it is a challenge to look at all of these things, and then to sort of develop a way that we look equally at each, and produce graphics and memos and various analyses that allow for comparison across these things, and to be able to sort of help create that level playing field, so that you can then set priorities and make sure that everybody is feeling that they're being tended to, and needs are being met. The challenge in working with so many different departments and across an entire town is that it does take time to do. It takes time to rally everybody, to be able to get right down to making sure people are turning in the surveys and things that we have on time, scheduling meeting times with everybody, and then pulling that together, and then getting people together from all these departments to review and to discuss things together. So I think that's probably the greatest challenge is just the people aspect, and getting everybody together and on the same page, and sort of behind the same goal. And then it's a great deal of data. So like I said, to put it together in a way that everybody has the ability to understand, and it becomes a useful product with all of that is something that has to be, attended to and paid attention. The town of Carlisle, same thing. It's a much smaller community. There's only 5,000 people there. They had only 5 public buildings, smaller buildings. This is outside of the school department. But there was a similar sort of thing is that even though there's only 5 buildings, all 5 buildings were different building types and on very different sites, and it keeps it interesting but pulling that all together, and again, even getting the limited number of department heads together can be a challenge. But I think in that one, in both towns, but Carlisle in particular, we worked very closely with their capital needs committee, and they were greatly helpful in corralling everybody and sort of keeping the thing moving. So it was very helpful there to have that the sort of it was a committee of 4. I think it was 4. It might have been 5, but that sort of that singular body to help sort of move things along was very helpful.
And I just wanted to add that in those cases, I feel like interviewing and the client interaction really helped with gaining understanding of what the priorities and needs for each town were, like going to the interviews and getting the surveys and getting a scope of the buildings that were used for a variety of things, even within the building, really helps paint a picture of how to move forward with those projects and planning for the future.
All right, with that, I'm going to go to Mr. Palmer with question 4.
If you feel you've already answered this question because of your prior answer about Concord and Carlisle, sure, you can stand on that. But I was wondering what was the most difficult space needs challenge your firm faced in the evaluating, planning, and/or completion in the last 5 years? And it doesn't have to be a specific building; it could be a process. What do you feel is the most difficult in the last 5 years?
So the last 5 years, so we have a couple, and by difficult, I don't want to say that it was not enjoyable, or that we didn't sort of appreciate, because anything that is difficult is much more enjoyable when we have when we and you work well together and tackle it together. So I would say, on one of them, it is Concord, and it's particular to the townhouse because the townhouse had so many different departments in it, and had so many different things done to it over the years that we actually had to, we had our surveyors do a 3D scan of the entire building, because there was just nothing and no way to really understand all of the different things that had happened to that building. So, we did that. We went through this process of space planning and understanding what the needs of the different departments were, and coming up with a variety of options of how they could not only get things to work well in that building, but be able to bring a couple of other of the smaller departments back into that building, which freed up space elsewhere, or gave the potential to sell off some other buildings. And we did that, and people were on board. At the same time, though, there was already a push to really renovate the first floor of the building. They wanted to see that happen. And so ultimately, even before we got the final, or the draft of the report sort of fully compiled, they asked us to embark on planning, designing, and carrying out the construction on the first floor of the townhouse. And that is, in fact, almost complete. It's about 90% done now. But I think the challenge really there was the fact that what ultimately they're doing there is not necessarily the same thing that was coming out of the space study. And it was a little bit because they really wanted to have this work be done, and they were not ready to start looking at the entire building, or they didn't have the resources to look at the entire building and to implement the sort of larger scale thing that came out of the space needs study. So there was a lot of back and forth and changing things constantly in order to try and get what was going to work now for what they could actually implement, and still set it up for the potential down the road implementation of more of that larger scale plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Pfaff, question 5.
In looking at Southborough's RFQ and other publicly available information, what do you see as the greatest opportunity and challenge as we embark down this process?
So you have kind of a number of buildings clustered around the common, a couple others that are not too far away, and then the farthest away one, the South Union building, is I think one of your most interesting looking buildings, and its siting is really it sort of evokes a very grand thing, even though it's not a large building in the scheme of things. It's a good sized building, but it certainly has a presence that says, I want to be something more, and it just captures the imagination. I'd have to, like, a very simple answer: the South Union School building is sort of ripe for any number of event spaces, which I think you're using to a certain extent with the Parks and Recreation department, but it sort of wants to be this space that you can that you can lease out and you can make money for the town, as well as sort of allowing people to enjoy that sort of fantastic hillside and the siting of that building. So that captures imagination. I think all of the buildings, there is, and this is where I say it's really important to us to work with you to understand what it is you guys want for your town, because any one of these buildings has potential for any number of things, and that's the goal of this project, really. And that's I sort of go all the way back to our interest is in understanding and getting to work on buildings of different eras, and getting to know the folks in different departments and understanding how the town works. It leads to, we can think big about some sort of major reconfigurations potentially, if it would help, and we can sort of hone in on a building by building kind of approach.
Great.
Thanks. With that, question 6, Ms. Brascio.
Thank you. If you were sitting on this side of the table and interviewing potential designers, what is the most important question you would ask of those companies?
I think the question would be, how will you, work with us to best to get the most out of this project with the limited resources that we have to do it. I think sort of the answer to that again is that it is really a collaborative effort, and the ability to talk back and forth. I look at all of the things that in your RFQ that you would really like to do, and I look at all of the broad range of services that we've provided to various municipalities on a range of budgets. And it really comes down to saying, having some frank conversations about how involved do you want to get with this building and the other buildings. Exactly what do you need to know in order to sort of fully program and map out that the roadmap for the future.
Great. So question 7 has a few parts to it, full disclosure. Sure. You have about 5 minutes left. You will have enough time to answer. Some of these may be as simple as yes or no. Okay. Some of them you may wish to expand. And this is kind of our confirmatory / closing questions. Part A of it is, are you available to start negotiations next week?
Yes. Part
B, are you available to start working immediately upon successful award of a contract?
Yes.
Part C, are you comfortable with the proposed timelines outlined in the RFQ?
No, when we put the RFQ in and I looked at that yes, we were. Exactly what it is, I don't remember off the top of my head, but this is...
It was 45 days for an initial deliverable.
For an initial deliverable, yeah. So I think, we can work in that. I think that it begins with a good conversation as to exactly what you want to get out of that, or having that initial deliverable, and then determining, how much it is, we have to do on that, and how much of the sort of upfront, interviews and surveys and things that we might need to do with various folks in town, and how quickly we can get that stuff back. Okay. But the our end of sort of building analyses and the existing building analyses and existing site analyses and things, absolutely.
Okay. Part D of that is, please describe any competing priorities that your team members may have during this time period.
Well, we are, because of the size of the firm and the work that we do, used to juggling schedules quite a bit, because in the public realm, schedules get set out and sometimes they get kept, and sometimes things fall out. And over the past year especially, there have been things. I'm happy to report that we didn't have any project. We didn't lose any projects over this past year, but there were a handful that certainly got put on hold for a while. And so interestingly, one of them is the town of Wayland looking at their town hall and master planning their town hall. And we've been working to get that one up and going again. And it is slowly going. And I say that one because myself, Island, and Anika are working on that one. But it's a single building, and it is sort of in the same realm, the same mindset. And so while that one may ultimately get going, I'd like to think it would, but that would be the only one that I would think it would sort of, possibly compete with time. But as I say, it's in the same mindset, same type of work.
Okay, and this is it. Do you have any questions that you'd like us to answer with your remaining 3 minutes?
I mean, I guess my only question for you, and maybe hard to answer, is that, does that make sense to you that, if negotiations go well and we sit down, the first time that we sit down and make sure that we're going to hit the deliverable you want, that, we have that frank conversation about how much, how in depth, what do we need on the various buildings, and what is it you're really looking for? Because I think it is difficult putting out an RFQ to say all the things you'd like to have. And I know that, you got quite a few questions during the bidding or, proposal process of what exactly are you looking for? How far do you want to go? And this sort of thing. And I don't have any problem with that, because, that's why I say, are you guys comfortable having that conversation and, really nailing down at that time what it is?
I think we have to, right? Because I think we have to be fair to you in any sort of contract that gets entered into between your right, and there's obviously a fee associated with it, and naturally a lot of us work in the consulting realm, not necessarily in the design world, but we get how out of scope can creep up, and we've worked with other design firms recently on a public safety building, so we know how it works, right? And I think the important thing is we have to be fair to each other. and, you know, agree on milestones, et cetera. And, you know, if we have a department head that's out for a month for X, Y, or Z reason, and that department head is critical to your deliverable, then we'll have a discussion about timeline and stuff like that, you know, but we're obviously not aware of any circumstances like that at this point in time, but that's really kind of, you know, I think what that next discussion would be, who it would be with, we haven't decided yet, but that would be something we're going to talk about tomorrow night.
Sure. Yeah, I think, you know, most important is regular communication as to, you know, how things are proceeding, and if, you know, there's going to be a hiccup, to try to call it out right away and work around it.
Great. So we're right about at your time. We greatly appreciate both of you joining us tonight, and someone will be in touch very soon based on the timeline I had articulated at the beginning of the session.
Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Thank you. Very nice.
All right. It is 8 p.m. It's 8:30 p.m. Our next firm is Drummy, Roseanne, and Anderson. I can see Courtney. I added Courtney in. If there's anyone, Courtney, is Ken with you as well?
Ken was joining very shortly. He was going for the link when I just talked to him a second ago. So.
All right. Do you have anyone else joining you?
Just us two tonight.
Great. All right. So Ken is in. As soon as we confirm his audio works, I'll give a quick opening.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us at this hour. Greatly appreciate your flexibility. What I figured I would do is just give a very brief overview of what we're going to try to accomplish in the next 30 minutes. You'll hear from the committee members with some questions. We were asking the same questions to all the firms that we were talking to tonight. We have one more interview after you, and then we are not planning to discuss or deliberate tonight which firm we'd like to proceed with or make a recommendation on. We are going to meet tomorrow night in another public meeting to discuss that, kind of digest what we've heard from the various parties tonight. So we'll be meeting tomorrow night to make that recommendation. It is a recommendation only. It goes to the Board of Selectmen, who, as you probably read in the RFQ, are technically the ones that would be the ones awarding a contract. They are scheduled to meet on Tuesday night. So we do have one Board of Selectmen member here on our committee as well. But they would then make their decision then. And then the goal would be, if they did award a contract, it would obviously be subject to successful contract negotiations and to enter into contract negotiations right after that. Any questions on that piece?
No, that's pretty straightforward.
Yep. And then in terms of how tonight's going to work, we have about 30 minutes with you. I'll give you 5 minutes heads up at the end. And there's 7 questions in total. You're going to hear from myself as the chair, and then my other committee members that I have the pleasure to serve with, Ms. Braccio, Mr. Hark, Mr. Palmer, Mr. Pfaff. We also see Mr. Purple, who's our town administrator, here as well. We're just going to rotate through the questions and ask you those, and then we'll wrap up at the end.
We do have a little bit of a presentation. I don't know how that will fit, but if you're going to do questions.
So what I would suggest is if there is a presentation, if at any point a question would be better answered by whatever you have prepared, I'd be happy to give you or Courtney sharing rights to bring the presentation up. All right, Courtney, I saw Courtney raise her. If so, but yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go about it, if that works for you.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'll roll right in with question 1. Please introduce yourselves to us. What roles each of you would play on the engagement, including, specific identification of who our day-to-day contact would be.
Okay. Well, I'm Ken Best. I'm the principal in charge of the project, and I will be actively involved through the course of the project. And then Courtney is our project manager. You want to speak, Courtney?
Yeah, I've been with the DRA since about 2009, and I've done a few different space studies. I have not done as many as Ken has done. He's probably haven't met anyone that has done more space studies than Ken, but I've learned a lot of things since I've been here in 2009, and this is one of my favorite parts of what we do.
Oh, and there will also be some drafting people that we'll be using as part of the survey work to come out and do measurements. If, you know, I'm not sure exactly what you have in the way of drawings, but where we've got gaps or things changed since those drawings were prepared, we'll have somebody come out and make those measurements so we have accurate information on what you currently have.
Great. It's going to vary, as you can probably tell. There's various
Yes.
ages to the buildings we have in town. So with that, I'll go to Ms. Braccio with question 2.
Thank you. Good evening. We are interviewing 3 other companies for this role. What is unique about your company that sets it above the others? And what is the single primary reason we should select you over someone else? Thank you.
I think it's, you know, part of it is the amount of experience we have with this kind of study. And Courtney, this might be a good spot to pull up the slide number 4.
Right.
If we could.
Courtney, you now should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Hopefully I'm sharing the correct one.
We do not see anything yet. There we go.
Okay.
Something's showing up.
Okay.
There we go.
This is a chart that shows similar studies, and we've got, you know, cities and towns on the left-hand side, the year we did those studies, and then across the top are the types of facilities that were included in those studies. So we've actually highlighted in orange the ones that we would be doing on your project. So it's pretty extensive, and this is only a partial list. There was a slightly longer list in the proposal that we submitted, but the numbers in each of the charts indicate the numbers of those particular buildings or types of buildings that were included as part of the study. So, like I say, we've got a wealth of experience, which I think is going to be invaluable. And over time, we've developed a number of different ways to customize our information to suit the towns we're working with. Even though towns want facility studies, there's always something a little unique in what we're doing. And so we really strive hard to make sure the information we're giving you is appropriate for your particular project.
Great. I'll go to question 3, Mr. Hark.
Thank you. So if you could please describe a project that you've undertaken with another municipality, similar to what the town of Southborough is looking to accomplish, and provide the successes and obstacles to completion.
Okay. Well, one that we did was with Tingsboro, and I think Courtney has another slide for that too.
I got it. 1 second. I'll just toggle back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, it's okay.
And Tingsboro was interesting because it had a large number of vacant buildings that were historic and vacant, and they really wanted to utilize their facilities. So we did this study a few years ago, looking at all the possibilities. And Courtney has a chart that shows you how we presented that information. But so on the left here, or at least on the far left, we've color-coded various approaches to to the buildings. One, we're putting in a new use, so anything that's coded in blue would be a new use for that particular building. Anything in red would be a renovation of that building, and anything in the yellowy orange color would be a renovation addition. We also, as an aside, we did do some market analysis for alternative uses for some of these buildings as well. But it's sort of nice because, you know, if you look at something like the fire department, well, the fire department would fit in the town offices and the library space. It would also work in a new building, a new public safety building. And, you know, so there's a bunch of different options here. But again, it's a chart that was really appropriate for their particular needs. And what's sort of interesting here, we got a call back recently where they want to put the police department into the town offices, the town hall in the historic Winslow School building, which is a wood structure, and the library would go into a new building. So we've been given that project, and hopefully that will start probably in a month or so. But you know, it was a lot of different buildings, a lot of different situations. The floor plans on the left also indicate where we were looking at the town hall to meet their space needs, to use the space more efficiently. And in this case, we added on to the end of the building to meet the particular requirements. But that's an example of a project where it went really well, and they've actually come back to have us continue on at a greater level.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Palmer, question 4.
In the last 5 years, what would you say was the most significant space needs challenge your firm has faced in evaluating, planning, and or completing a project? And it can be about process or individual buildings.
Oh, let me just think here a moment. Just bear with me a second while I refresh my memory on what we did in the last 5 years.
If it's a good story, you don't have to limit to the last 5 years.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Some of the challenges. Well, in Hadley, again, it was another one of these surveys that included a lot of historic structures. And one of them, it was sort of replanning, looking for new uses. And there was a school building that was had been rented out to a sort of Montessori type school. And we looked at using it as a town hall, just so the town could use that particular building. And we laid out the space, but we also met challenges with the building. One, the egress really didn't work. With an older building, sometimes the egress doesn't meet current codes. And we were doing a lot of renovation work to make it happen. So we didn't get much relief from the existing building code, which if you limit the amount of work that you do, you can get some relief on what you have to do. But in this particular case, that was an issue. We also had a problem with the corner of the building sinking into the ground, which was a little bit of a challenge. And so we did spend quite a bit of time with structural engineers trying to figure out how expensive it would be to correct that situation, because it was significant with large cracks in the corner of the building and, you know, a significant separation between the lower part of the wall and the upper part of the wall. And also parking. parking is another big issue that we have to consider with all these, when we're reusing an existing building. And that particular one had very limited land. So we weren't able to meet the requirements for parking. And so were the project to go ahead, they would have had to have, purchased additional land to meet the parking needs. So all around it was a challenging building. And they decided not to go that route. But, at least we gave them the information they needed to make so that, that decision was understood.
Thank you.
That, I'll go to question 5, Mr. Pfaff.
Thanks. In looking at Southborough's RFQ and other publicly available information, what do you see as the greatest opportunity and challenge as we embark down this process?
Okay.
I might step in a little bit on that because I was able to look at a few things today and in the past days in terms of the buildings that you're looking at. And I think it's the questions about, what are your priorities and challenges and goals with these 6 buildings, because you have a good amount of departments. Most of them are next to each other, but is your goal consolidation? Is your goal, and then also, we noticed that there might be, I think it's the South Union building that might be for sale. There's also the school building, the Margaret Neary School, that one, if there's a statement of interest with MSBA, there's kind of, things that could overlap and help you, but we need, we wanted to make sure that all these things are going in the positive direction and not working against each other.
All right, Ms. Brascio, question 6.
Great, thank you. If you were sitting on this side of the table or camera screen, as it may be, and interviewing potential designers, what is the most important question you would ask of those companies?
That's a question.
I think experience again is a big factor. Experience with different kinds of situations, because town is different. I mean, we have for example, we have an adjacency chart that we typically do that show what departments need to be next to what other departments. And it's amazing how that differs quite a bit from town to town. So having experience, we know that that's an important document to have, because we don't want to design something that's not going to function. If we just assume what needs to be where, that's not going to work. The other thing, when it comes down to designing too, is to consider not just the spaces, but also how the public has access to them. There are certain departments that need, simple access to, like the town clerk office, for example. And there are others that don't need that kind of access. And so that helps us organize the building so that it meets the needs of the people in town as much as it meets the people in the building itself. I think the other thing too is that when we're looking at the number of buildings that are spread out throughout the town, we need to figure out, which buildings can be separate from, say, the town hall building. Which departments, I should say, can be separate from the town hall, so that that gives us flexibility on how the buildings get used. But overall, I guess it's experience in just dealing with these kinds of projects and adapting to the different needs from town to town, I think is really important.
Okay. With that, question 7 has a few parts to it, but it is the final question. Some of them may be as easy as yes, no, and some of them you may choose to expand on further. Part A is, are you available to start negotiations next week?
Yes. Yep.
Part B, are you available to start working immediately upon successful award of a contract?
Yes.
Part C, are you comfortable with the proposed timeline outlined in the RFQ?
Yes.
Part D, please describe.
Actually, I should add to that. The only thing on the timeline is really how much time the town needs to review the documents. Once we submit our initial draft, I think I have a few days in there. But if the town wants 2 weeks to review the documents, then that would be different, obviously.
Got it. Fair point.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that definitely could be outlined as part of kind of a kickoff meeting. Part D, please describe any competing priorities that your team members here tonight may have during this time period.
I think I have vacation next week, but that shouldn't affect it.
We understand, obviously, it's the summer months. We're not necessarily getting after the vacation aspect, we're getting after, how many other clients, right. Candidly, we'd be competing with.
Yeah. As far as at some point, Tingsboro will start up, but I don't anticipate that for about another month.
Okay.
So there will be a little bit of an overlap on that. I'm finishing up a project in Grafton right now, which basically require much of my time at all. The project manager is handling the closeout on that project. There's a small library renovation project that we're doing, which again probably won't get going. We're waiting for state approvals on it, so it might not get going again for another month or so. So, it's actually a good time for us. And Courtney,
I'm coming off of a CA project, right, or a construction administration project right now. So this one is kind of fizzling out, and my hours have gone down significantly actually over the last month in terms of my time commitment on that one.
Okay, great. So final part of this question is do you have any questions for us?
Well, there's one of the things that we had in our presentation was we went through the process of how we go about the work and the kinds of charts we use and what have you. But there's a part where we're collecting information. And one of the questions we have, is there anything we don't know that we should know to enable? You don't have to answer that tonight, but that's the question. Anything we should know that we don't know before we get going on the project? Because, if you have, or there's been discussions about certain things, we kind of like to know that. Here on the left-hand side. Courtney, do you want to go through these?
Right, I think I kind of touched a little bit on the NERI school. We wanted to know if there's an interest or a statement of interest submitted with MSBA with enrollment and consolidation. I think enrollment is going to be a big factor in looking at the space utilization within the NERI school. So that's a big question that we would have starting off.
Yeah, so I can just answer that quickly. There was a statement of interest submitted. However, space needs at the NERI school is not part of this discussion. However, the school administration does reside there. That piece is. So, and there is enrollment studies underway, and there is a subcommittee that is part of actually this committee analyzing that with the superintendent of schools. So we would be able to bring any successful respondent up to speed on where those projects are at, because it may bring additional buildings into play.
Right. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. And then we noticed that the South Union School, which is a beautiful building, we know that it's potentially, I found some information on it's potentially up for development, that site. So we look at that. I think your recreation department is over in that building right now. I don't have in front of me of the rest of departments in there. So we know
one of the department, Youth and Family Services, over there.
Okay. It's a beautiful building. I know it means a lot to folks in Southborough. So we just would want a little bit more information on that when we start off in terms of, what the goals are for that building.
Okay. There will be an update that Andrew and Joe will be able to provide if you are the successful applicant.
Okay.
And where that stands.
And then Ken, you had questions about the library.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is the library going to be vacated, or are we working with the library space to determine what's needed?
There's no intent to vacate the library that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So they would be part of the discussions, though. And there is, someone keep me honest here, there is a permanent restriction on that building, like the land that building sits on, it always has to be a library.
Yeah,
right.
A use restriction, it has to be a library.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure whether including that, whether it was, you wanted to look at it for office space or something. But so we're really looking at that from a library utilization.
Yeah, they have certainly raised their hand saying that they would like to get in the queue for the next round of funding that comes from the library board. I know that that's out there.
Yeah, it's out there. Yeah.
So that would be, I would think, part of your analysis is how much additional space may be needed, and is there a different way to think about it?
Yeah, a lot of that is based upon the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, and they have strict guidelines as far as how much library space you need. I think in this study we can give a pretty good idea of how much space you might need, but in order to kind of figure out if you're going to go for the grant, that requires a lot more input as far as collection size and growth.
Yeah, understood. And we also have an independent library board of trustees that would be part of that, just that initial discussion. So I think it's really scoping analysis.
Yeah. Okay.
The other two.
I am going to. I didn't. You have about 3 minutes left. I didn't want to interrupt that last question. So.
Okay. No worries. And the other two we kind of touched on a little bit. These are. We want to know a little bit more about your goals. We're looking for consolidation and geographical priority in terms of proximity of the departments. And then just of note, I know we're not doing a facilities assessment on these buildings. And I think someone mentioned earlier that the buildings are various ages. And it's something that we noted when we looked at them is, they are in various conditions on just from what we could observe, exterior, interior. We didn't go inside all the buildings, but just looking at the exterior, there is some facility, if we were to, prioritize certain buildings, we could just note that there are facilities concerns with various systems or utilities, or potentially even like the envelope itself. So.
Understood.
Yeah.
All right. We greatly appreciate both of you joining us, and someone will be in touch very shortly based on the timeline I outlined at the beginning of the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
That's good.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
We'd love to work with you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Looking at a clock, it is 8:58. We do have a 9 o'clock interview with Schwartz Silver Architects, Inc. So what I'll ask is when members of that firm, I see a few popping in potentially, if you can just raise your hand if you're associated with Schwartz Silver, I will bring you in.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hi. I have to say, I've been on my town's preservation commission, so if I'm used to meeting at night at this time in this format, it's good to see all of you.
Likewise.
Can I just confirm it's just going to be the three of you this evening, and I'm not expecting anyone else?
Just the three of us. That's right.
Awesome. So welcome. On behalf of the Town of Southborough's Capital Planning Committee, we greatly appreciate your submission on the RFQ. You are our final interview this evening. We do not intend to deliberate after the discussion tonight. We are actually have a posted meeting tomorrow where we expect to come forward with a recommendation. Our recommendation is just that, it's a recommendation, not an award. That recommendation will go to the Board of Selectmen, who are scheduled to meet on Tuesday night. Assuming they award a contract, it would obviously be subject to contract negotiation. So it would really just be a selection of which firm to proceed into the negotiations with. And then we would expect to be able to begin negotiations right after that with the successful firm. That's the process that we were planning to undertake from a decision making. So it'll be quick, hopefully. We do also intend to use the next 30 minutes in the following manner. Myself as the chair, I'm joined by Ms. Braccio, Mr. Hark, Mr. Palmer, and Mr. Pfaff. We're the 5 committee members that will be voting on this, and Mr. Purple is the town administrator. We'll ask you a series of questions. All firms have been asked the same exact questions through the process. There's 7 in total. I'll give you a 5-minute warning as you approach kind of the end of this discussion, if needed. If you get that far, just so you can balance your time. You obviously can spend as much or as little time on each question as you'd like.
Great.
Make that work for you?
That's perfect. Seems fine. Maybe
all right.
Just is it okay to take a few minutes? We can just introduce ourselves so you know.
That's actually the first question. So I'll just read it in full, but it was basically, please take a moment to introduce your team to us, what roles each you would play on our engagement, and with key clarity on who our day-to-day contact would be out of the group that's in front of us.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. So I'm Peter Kleiner. I'm a principal at Schwartz Silver, and I'd be the principal in charge for this project. And this is a great project. This is something we're really interested in, and meets a lot of sort of skill sets that our firm specializes in. Schwartz Silver is really known nationally as a design firm, but we really think that design comes from really just problem solving and identifying the problem early in the process. We are especially known for our sensitive restorations and additions of historic buildings. And that's where I have a lot of experience in small and very significant, historically significant projects. My other projects are very large federal and state projects, including federal courthouses and state courthouses. These are enormously complicated projects with multiple stakeholders, departments, and agencies that we have to coordinate, ranging from 600,000 square feet projects, more in the range of 200,000 square feet. And so what we did is we used some of those skills recently, and we sort of applied those to a project at Wellesley Town Hall. And we've been working for the town of Wellesley for the past year, and really helping them assess how things may be different in this sort of post-COVID environment, and reassessing their space needs. And we're starting that project now and working with Stuart.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stuart Marshall. I'm a senior associate at Schwartz Silver, and I would be the project manager for the study, and I would be your day-to-day contact. As Peter said, we've been working with the town of Wellesley through 2 studies that looked at the organization and phased redistribution of town departments. And we're actually kicking off the design phase for the interior renovation of their historic town hall next week. I work on other public projects, namely fire stations. These often involve test fitting complex programs on various sites, potential sites that the town has. Maybe less obvious in terms of relevance to this project, I help museums nationwide understand the space requirements for storing their collections. This work involves complicated long-term planning and phasing. Let me introduce Vanessa here as well. She actually worked on the Wellesley Town Hall study. She's really more involved in the museum collection storage work, but she has a knack for managing data, and that's useful across her entire practice, and I think would prove invaluable to this project. Vanessa.
So I'm Vanessa Laub, and as Stuart mentioned, we've worked on a great deal of collection storage projects together, and in those I'm working with a very large, complex data set, often tens of thousands of objects that then I take and I translate that into spatial needs, often spaces that are requiring hundreds of thousands of square feet. And that's something that I was able to apply to Wellesley Town Hall, as well as many other projects that we've done in the office.
Great. With that, I'll go to Ms. Brasher to ask question number 2.
Great, thank you. Welcome. We are interviewing 3 companies for this role. What is unique about your company that sets it above the others? And what is the single primary reason we should select you over someone else? Thank you.
Well, I think we are we're not exclusively town hall designers, as you probably noticed from our submission, but we're a generalist practice, and we pick projects that we find challenging. This one certainly falls under that. And we bring things to each project from different areas of the practice that we think will be helpful in other projects. So there's a lot of sort of cross-pollination and thinking among the projects that we take on. And we really, I think Wellesley Town Hall, that was probably the first town hall we worked on in, I don't know, maybe decades, Peter. But we really enjoyed that process and felt like because of the broader experience that we have with other project types, we were able to bring something to that process that maybe just town hall designers wouldn't have offered.
Yeah, I think we have a unique set of experiences that we apply. We're sort of very nimble thinkers, so we don't specialize. We're a generalist firm, as Stuart mentioned, but we bring a lot of experiences from other projects and really bring some present you with different opportunities for even programmatic thinking. Oftentimes we are on a project after programming has been done, and we actually redo the programming phase because people often, other firms aren't as don't see the options in programming. They look at it as basically replicating the space needs that you have now, rather than asking the correct questions to really identify the problem and make sure that you are getting what you should have, not what everyone sort of wants to replicate. And I think that's a different type of process rather than just identifying simple square footage needs. And so what we find ourselves doing is going through a reprogramming process on each project we're on. And what we like to do is actually hit the project at this phase because we can actually influence it the most. I think experience that we've had over the past year has been really interesting. We've been doing this type of space analysis project, not only for Wellesley Town Hall, but I've been doing a very large project that's identifying the space needs requirements for actually all of Massachusetts trial courts. We're working on a large courthouse that is in Norfolk County. But during the process, COVID happened. And so Massachusetts decided to relook at how to allocate space for all offices and courthouses, and is relying on us to sort of come up with new space standards and new guidelines for courthouses statewide. And so we have a lot of experience within the last year of really some more creative thinking about how to identify how things have changed during this past year and apply those to projects like Wellesley Town Hall and all of our other projects.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Hark with question 3.
You might have answered this a little bit from your prior comments, but maybe if you could expand in terms of projects you've undertaken with other municipalities, similar to what we are looking for in the town of Southborough. Maybe if you could expand a little more on successes and obstacles to completion.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. We talk about this a lot. Wellesley, for example, when we start a project, defining goals is critical. But sometimes goal defining, there's some very obvious goals that come forward in the beginning. We would like a project that's more environmentally sound. We would like lower operating costs overall, et cetera. But sometimes through the process of working on the project, the thing that really makes the difference is finding a project goal that wasn't so obvious. For example, with Wellesley, the thing that really was the kind of turning point for the studies we did for them was the town finally saying, you know, what really matters here is what does town hall really mean to the town? And that really lays out a different set of parameters for understanding who ought to be in town hall, who ought to be in other locations in town, and what that building actually means to the town, both from a public use standpoint and from an administrative standpoint. And so I think from a challenge standpoint for us, it's getting past those really obvious parameters and finding something that's not right in front of us. And that's sort of the fun of the project. I mean, you guys probably have a list of goals and ideas already, and we're hoping that we can really bring something else to the table and pull something else out of it.
And I think you're at an interesting, really interesting phase of this project, which is really the project definition phase. And as I've noted before, oftentimes we're not as engaged in that project definition phase, and we come in after that's been done.
Yeah.
And I think what Stuart is saying is absolutely true, is we back out from that and say, let's please start with your goals and what you're trying to achieve. And you may have an hypothesis of what you already expect this project to be, and we can take a guess at that. But our first step is to actually challenge that and collect enough data and make sure that we understand what your goals are for this project. And so what we've done in many projects, Wellesley Town Hall, but I'm thinking other institutions where they have master plans, like private schools and universities that we work for, where we're doing multiple building projects. They often identify something as like, this is our important project, and we come in and ask the right questions and are able to determine that actually they're maybe looking in the wrong place and redirect that to sort of where it needs to be. And this is especially true where people have existing buildings, because I think we have a very skillful eye that we've done time and again in identifying the problems and the opportunities in existing buildings to make sure that those are realized at their highest and best use, and really transform those buildings. And I think that's something that we have a special skill set, and it's oftentimes seen, that's always an issue. In terms of obstacles and questions, I think one of the main things in terms of the programming phase is when we're working with multiple departments is inertia. People are resistant to change, even if it's something that they see a benefit in. And so a lot of our projects involve a very careful change management process where we help walk people through and make sure we understand what their issues are, what their goals are, what those sort of splinters are that they can't get beyond, and make sure that they feel comfortable with the process. And that really does start at programming and rethinking that.
Yeah, along those lines, Peter, if we simply hand out a questionnaire, which is the usual type of data collection, if we simply hand out a questionnaire that says to department heads or department staff members, what do you need and what do you really need? Oftentimes, what we get back is something that looks exactly like what they have, and so I think part of our job is to get everyone beyond that and think a little more openly about what's really required for the town.
And I think that's sort of, again, it's not identifying what you should have. It's in some ways it's getting people just to replicate the problems that they have already rather than thinking beyond that.
All right, Mr. Palmer with question 5.
In the last 5 years, what was the most difficult space needs challenge your firm has faced in the evaluating, planning, and/or completion processes? And it could be a building, or it could be a process that you've gone through, something that you would find found a challenge.
Do you want me to take this one, Stuart?
You can. I have my own thoughts.
All right.
I was going to say, I mean, something we're working on currently, and this is, outside of the municipal realm, but working with the museum in Houston, that gave us rather than, oftentimes with these collection storage projects, we will go and do a visual assessment of a museum's entire collection. We're told by the staff at the time we do this, it's exhausting that we've seen more of the collection than most of the people that work for the museum. But oftentimes, what we came to in Houston was a situation where, they were thinking of the preconceptions of what the space available in the museum really was. But when we analyzed the data, we were so far beyond what the space capacity of the museum is, and it's really a jewel of a building, and so sometimes we just don't have solutions for situations like that. It really requires a lot of input from our client after we've come to that point. So I think for me that's a very challenging place to be, where the data really leads us to a place where we say, look, we can't do anywhere close to what you were thinking we could do. And we cannot make the decisions as to how to move forward. So that for me is very challenging. Peter, if you...
No, and I could go through the alphabet soup of federal agencies I've worked with that they're all wonderful people in their own way. And they all have very specific needs. But in this over the last 2 years, we've been working with the Massachusetts trial courts, and we've been working on a project. And really, it's a very sophisticated group of people, and it's very unique and challenging space types and requirements. And the American judicial system is what it is because it moves at a snail's pace. It is not going to change quickly. And what we've been asked to do for the project I'm working on, it will be the largest new court building in Massachusetts, is they came to us saying we need 14 courtrooms, and we said that's great. We'll take a look at that, and we did an exhaustive analysis looking at a full year's worth of their data of all their trials, and we came back to them and said, what we're saying is that you actually need 10 courtrooms, and you don't need 14 courtrooms. Now that is when courtrooms cost $15 million, that's a significant savings to the state, in not only in construction and operations costs. Sending that message back to each of the judges who feel that they need that is a very challenging process, and And it requires a lot of back and forth and a lot of careful negotiations. So we had reduced the number of courtrooms, and then COVID happened, and now we have we're redoing that process with even more ammunition to say these are better ways of doing that. So it's been a really for me professionally, it's been a very challenging project, and it has a lot of different components to it, and it has a lot of experiences and knowledge that we bring to projects like yours.
And I just want to go back to what Stuart had mentioned. I also worked on that project with him in Houston. And again, the idea that at first they thought the issue was we need more space. But when we presented the problem to them, they started asking themselves more questions of what is their identity? What is their priorities? And again, so that was something else where, you know, they thought the problem was one issue where it was actually more than just that one specific issue. So peeling back those layers, helping them see what their issues may be, and that the problem is multifaceted, but then also taking that step back so they can make some decisions on their own, and then we can come back together and collaborate to move forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Brascio with question 6.
Actually, Jason, I think you missed Andrew with 5.
I did. You're right. I was on a roll. Andrew, why don't you go with number 5?
In looking at Southborough's RFQ and other publicly available information, what do you see as the greatest opportunity and challenge as we embark down this process?
Well, I think it is an opportunity and a challenge, is that it's not very, in terms of, if we just look purely at the problem as a set of data, and really the issue is that the permutations are limitless. How do we go about this? 16 departments, 6 buildings. How do we get to finding real solutions that are actionable after we're done? And again, I think it goes back to clearly defining goals or finding goals for the project, and then really testing them and seeing what works. So we go from the infinite to the very specific, and we need some mechanism to do that. I think that's the biggest challenge here, and we need to do it quickly. And that's where I think Vanessa's skills really will come into play here. It's not that the data itself is terribly complicated. It's that the combinations, because they could be limitless, we don't know yet. You may have ideas about things we ought to look at, and we'll certainly look at them, but we'll be looking for other solutions as well, and finding the guidance to get to those solutions is going to be critical and challenging.
And I guess for me, look, I'm sorry, I don't see challenges. So you have a lot of opportunities here. Look, you have a beautiful existing historic building. I think this is and I think the other facilities have some real opportunities that we would need to explore. But you're at an interesting point now where I think we've seen so many projects where, particularly, I'll say some of the historic buildings, it's hard for me to look at what other things that have happened where we see missed opportunities. So you have a tremendous opportunity in making sure that your existing building stock is meeting the needs of the town and creating better work environments, creating sort of a real asset to the town, creating a real sense of identity and pride for the town, and not being financial burdens on the town. So I think we're able to sort of look at that and help you make informed decisions on those processes and how to understand what your facilities are. I think there are incredible opportunities that, based on our experience, for how to think about the space programs, and how we can create the correct work environments for the different departments. And then that is going to, we're going to throw out some challenging ideas to you that will help you understand how different modes of working or different modes of organizing departments can increase the efficiency and flexibility of your planning process. And that's going to be key going forward, is so often these existing buildings, they get renovated in a way that's very rigid that prevents you from future modifications. And ultimately, we're in a time of tremendous growth and change. There's a lot of statistics out there. I won't bore you with them, but the way people are working now is changing, and this allows us to create new ways of looking at things, having conversations that will show you options of different arrangements of workspaces and organizations. So I will say the challenges then are how much everyone is on board with that process and those goals. Are we just in a status of inertia where people are reluctantly going along and just wanting their little improvements, that they want their desk a little bit bigger? That's not something that's going to generate a lot of discussion, and it will be our job to sort of pivot that and make sure that we can help them realize benefits of other ways of organizing things. One of the things I'll say we look at time and again, Wellesley Town Hall is a great example, is where we're given program requirements, and we realize that it's, again, the problem was identified wrong. The wrong questions were asked, and we look at space requirements and like, do you really need these offices? Do these really need to be private offices? Are these adjacencies really important? Or are you just replicating what you're familiar with because Patty, the treasurer, is good friends with Joe, the assessor, and they want to be next to each other, but they don't have any functional or operational need to be together? Do people, are there benefits in sort of combining departments in sort of more cohesive spaces that allow you flexibility as a town to manage those differently, particularly where you have staff with fluctuating staff demands and sort of part-time work? How do you manage that? So I think that's something that are some real opportunities for where you are in the project right now. And I think that's something that we find really exciting in developing with you.
Great, thank you.
All right, before I go to question 6 for the second time, I will warn you, you have 5 minutes left and we have 2 questions left.
Okay, we'll be faster.
All right, go ahead, Lisa. You're on mute, Lisa.
Sorry. If you were sitting on this side of the table and interviewing potential designers, what is the most important question you would ask of those companies?
That's a tough question.
I think for me, like you're looking for someone you can work with and help you guide through the process. I think for us, you know, we're not coming to you with preconceived notions of what Southborough needs and what your needs assessment are. So I think that's part of the problem with answering that question is we're coming to you with a nimble and open mindset to basically say, how can we solve your problem? I'm not looking to solve, like, I think this is what, I'm not usually looking to solve the trial courts problem. I'm not looking to solve Wellesley's problems. We're looking to figure out what your issues are together. So I think that is sort of our mentality and how we work with you. We need to solve this problem with you as a partner.
All right. Question 7 has a few parts, but I'll warn you, some of them can be answered with a yes, no. And some you can choose to expand on. Part A, are you available to start negotiations next week?
Yes.
Part B, are you available to start working immediately upon successful award of a contract?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you Part C, are you comfortable with the proposed timeline outlined in the RFQ?
Yes.
We have 45 days, but we weren't sure if that's calendar days or work days. So, but either way, we can do it. We did a similar study in a short time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Fair point. We can discuss. Part D, please describe any competing priorities that your team may have during this time period. You can leave vacation off to the side. It's really work, competing clients.
So, you know, this will be an important project. It's relatively small compared to some of the other projects that we're doing. And I think we're very confident we can fit this in. We do have Wellesley Town Hall. There's a couple of the museum clients, some of them which I can't name.
That's fine. No, we're just looking to understand workload, right? Are you already at your brink or not?
And the courthouse work I'm doing is not in design yet for those projects. We're doing we're finalizing statewide guidelines July and August.
Yeah, I'm kicking off a project that'll be in schematic design. That's something that will be a pretty steady process. It's not a rushed process. So I have availability to do this project. I have other commitments, but nothing, again, nothing that has a difficult timeline. So this would be very possible.
And I have a project that's wrapping up construction at the end of July. So I will also be very available.
The last one is, we won't answer them tonight, but given that where we're at in the time, but do you have any questions for us that if you were kind of the chosen firm that you'd want us to answer before entering into a contract?
I think, I think we would like to know a little bit more about the project. For sort of, like we said, like what are the sort of project goals and what are you entering into with a hypothesis for what this project is leading toward? Clearly, you want something different than what you have now. You want something that's you've identified a problem or a opportunity. So I think we'd like to know that a little bit more. And then beyond that, I think, again, it's exploring the options and possibilities.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your team's time. Sorry you had the 9 o'clock slot, but someone had to have it.
That's okay. I'm sorry you had your evening with
long evening for you guys.
So we'll be so someone from the town will be in touch shortly, obviously based on the prescribed timeline that I outlined at the beginning of this discussion.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
Inviting us. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
All right, thank you. All right. Under other business that may come before the committee, I just wanted to kind of maybe set the table for tomorrow night's discussion. So the goal would be to make a recommendation unless we can't come to a recommendation, but I would also like the committee to be prepared to discuss any feedback you have just on the process, right? With, in terms of the questions and just things more generally, right? If we have to do this again for any other process, I think it's always helpful to do kind of that sort of discussion while it's fresh. So if anyone does have any feedback that they'd like to share, I think tomorrow night would be the appropriate time to do that as we discuss. And then assuming that there is a contract to negotiate, I do think obviously Mark needs to be part of that. But what I've seen with other committees is just one representative would join Mark in those discussions, maybe start to answer the firm's questions about, what else they want to know, and then bring that back to our full committee for kind of a formal discussion, particularly around scope, what's in, what's out, what we're going to get, just to make sure everyone's aligned. But we're not going to go back and forth through multiple public meetings. The goal would be, much like other boards, go and negotiate contracts with employees. It would be the same thing. Bring back something that can be discussed in terms of the process and approved. Again, Board of Selectmen have the ultimate authority here, but how I've seen it work in the past is we would do the legwork because we're going to be responsible for making sure we have the right scope and the right deliverables, and that we're not paying for something that isn't accomplishing what we obviously set out to do here. That makes sense?
Yep.
The only other thing I just wanted to acknowledge is I believe everyone got it because there is that board and committee mailing list, but there was 2 distributions from the town, one related to the ADA study, which I think was well over 200 pages, and one related to ARPA. I'm planning to send kind of a response that Capital has just not had the time to meet and discuss them to provide feedback, but we do anticipate having feedback. At least I think you guys are discussing that at a meeting. But I just don't see another path at this point. We're happy to be part of conversations, but I didn't want to rush a response. I didn't want to rush a meeting, and there's a lot of content there, and I'm sure there's going to be other avenues. I just wanted to make sure everyone was okay with that approach, because I think it's important for us to acknowledge and be part of the process, but I don't think we're ready to be part of the process yet, because we haven't had a chance to fully deliberate and discuss as a group. That makes sense? All right. Is there any other business anyone wanted to raise tonight? All right. I don't have any public comment listed. I will entertain public comment tomorrow on this topic when, before we take any formal motions. It's my intent. All right. Anything else? All right. I'm going to move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Joe. Roll call vote. Braccio.
Aye.
Hark.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Pfaff.
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
You too. Thanks.